How you YouTube moms manage to do YouTube and be a mom at the same time, I don't even know. Like, I can't even begin to explain how hard this is. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I filmed a video, but I was kind of busy having a baby. But she's 3 months old now, and I figured I would do my labor and delivery story now. A lot of you voted on my Instagram stories that you wanted to hear my labor and delivery story, but a lot of you also wanted to see my ColourPop favorites, so I will be doing that video as well. But first, I'm going to be posting this one. I have my baby monitor watching Blair right now while she's napping, so this is the only time I can get this video done. So let's bring it back to July 16, 2017. That day we went out shopping for a couple of things, and all throughout the movie I was feeling some tightenings on my stomach, but I thought, you know what, it's probably just Braxton Hicks because I'd read about Braxton Hicks contractions before. Then the next morning, July 17, at around 7 a.m, I went to go to the bathroom like I normally have to, and I saw that there was blood, and I was like, okay, this is really odd. I started panicking and freaking out because I thought something was wrong. So I called up the hospital and said, you know, look, I woke up and I have some blood. I'm 36 weeks at the end of this week. Like, is this okay? What do I do? And they said, you know what, come in, just because it is a bit worrying that you are bleeding. So my fiance called into work and was like, I can't come in, I need to take her to the hospital, we don't know what's wrong, she's bleeding. So they're like, you know what, no worries, take her in and figure out what's wrong. So we went to the hospital and they were monitoring me for a couple of hours. We went in, we were there by 8, and I think by like 12 I was still in the labor and delivery ward, and they still didn't know what was wrong. They were doing tests and everything, and they kept asking me, they're like, you're not feeling any tightenings, like your stomach is fine, like you don't feel anything. I said no, like there was just bleeding. So they said, okay, we'll just have to admit you just because there is an excessive amount of bleeding and you have lost quite a bit of blood. We need to just make sure we keep your fluids up and we'll monitor you and we'll do some more tests. So I was there July 17, 18, and then 19th at noon, they discharged me. And before they discharged me, they still said, you know what, we don't know what's wrong, but you're safe to go home because the bleeding has stopped. But they told me that if the bleeding came back, I would have to come back in so they could do more tests and just make sure baby was okay. But the entire time I was there, they were monitoring her and they said, you know what, she looks good, she looks fine, she doesn't seem to be stressed or anything, we can send you home. Every time they strapped me up, I think they could read that I was having contractions, but I couldn't feel them. And so that's what they were a little bit like, what's going on? But they weren't too concerned because I was still pretty early. So maybe it was either early labor or it was Braxton Hicks. July 19 at noon, I went home, went to bed. In the middle of the night I started getting some tightenings in my stomach, and I just thought, okay, you know what, it's the same thing that happened earlier in the week, it's probably nothing, just sleep it off. I just thought like I upset my stomach in some way. I went back to bed, and by then I was probably needing to pee like every hour or so, so I'd have to keep getting up to pee. By morning at around 6 a.m. I got up and I went to the toilet again and I wiped, and there was blood again. And I told Henry, I was like, okay, there's blood again, like what do I do? I really don't want to go back to the hospital. If something is wrong, you should always go to the doctor, is what I'm saying. I was just so sick of being in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 2 days and I was just done with it. So I mentioned it to him, and then I told him, you know what, maybe it's just Braxton Hicks, let's not worry about it. And he said, okay, we'll just monitor both the bleeding and the contractions and we'll see how we go throughout the day. So throughout the day, I was monitoring my contractions. I honestly thought it was Braxton Hicks the whole day, but at the same time, it felt very familiar to my labor with Ethan. Say about 10 a.m, I messaged my cousin, because she had a baby a year ago, so she would know, she'd be more aware of what was happening, because I had a baby 8 years ago, I don't remember at all. I texted her and said, hey, like, this is what's going on, is this normal, did you have Braxton Hicks? And she was like, I never had Braxton Hicks, but what are you feeling? Like, describe to me what you're feeling and everything. So I described to her and everything. She's like, okay, well, how far apart are the contractions? Time it. And so, like, we discussed everything. And she was like, okay, I'll keep calling you throughout the day just to make sure you're okay, and we'll see how we go. She's like, but it could just be early labor. And because for her, she had the same thing happen, but the nurses told her, you know, you could go into labor tonight or next week. And I figured, okay, that's gonna be me. I'm like so close to being 36 weeks pregnant. There's no way I'm gonna be giving birth soon because it's still too early. So she was like, yeah, it could just be early labor. So by then I was thinking, okay, let's not freak out. It's probably nothing. I didn't want to tell anyone anything either, because that on July 20, my grandma had eye surgery, so I was home alone. Oh no, I wasn't home alone. I was with my brother. My brother was home, and I didn't want to freak him out or anything, because I think he had work or uni that day, and I didn't want him to stay home babysitting me. So I was like pretending that I was fine all throughout the day. But when my mom came home, my grandma came home, I had to act like I was fine, because I didn't want them freaking out, because you know how parents are, and you know how grandparents are. They're gonna freak out every little thing, and they would tell me to go to the hospital, and I really didn't want to. I have the book where my cousin told me to time the contractions so we see how far apart they are and how long they're lasting. So I've looked back on that book, and I see that the contractions were like 10 minutes apart, and they were going for about a minute and a half every single time, and then sometimes they would get shorter and shorter. By 5 p.m. Henry was home from work, and by then I was like, okay, this is what's been happening all day, this is what I'm feeling. He's like, okay, like I don't think he understood what was really going on. And I was like, you know, Beth, that's our cousin, Beth told me to time and everything, so that's what I've been doing, and I've been calling her all day and everything. And it's like, okay, good, at least you had someone, you know, to help you. By 5 o'clock, by 5:30 or something, I just couldn't deal with the pain anymore. Like it was getting so tense, so hard, and then like I just felt so much pressure down there as well, that I was like, you know, I can like, it was a kind of pain that I could handle, but not, if that makes sense. So it really, really hurt, but at the same time, I think my pain tolerance is just pretty high. So Henry was like, what are you feeling? And I told him, and he's like, okay, maybe we should call Beth and ask her. So I had an app going on my phone as well. So I had an app on my phone that was timing the contractions, and I think it timed 6 contractions, and then it immediately said, okay, get ready to go to the hospital. And that's when I started freaking out, because I was like, it's way too early for me to give birth. So I was like, I ignored it, and then I let it time some more contractions, and then I think it let 3 more contractions go through, and was like, okay, no, you gotta go to the hospital right now, get everything that you need, all the paperwork and stuff, and get to the hospital, especially if it's far away. And my hospital is about 30-45 minute drive from here. So I was like to Henry, oh my god, do we go? And he had no idea either. So what I did was I called up our cousin, and I was like, this is what my app is telling me, this is what I'm feeling. And she's like, okay, yeah, go to the hospital, get it checked out and everything, like make sure. I was like, okay. I grabbed all my paperwork, and my paperwork said call the hospital before you go there, just to be sure that you really need to go in. So I was like, okay, that's a good idea. I was freaking out at this point. So I called the hospital, and they said that because I did have, my bleeding came back, to just come in, just to be safe. So by 6 o'clock, me and Henry were on the road, on the way to the hospital. And at this point, this was a Thursday, I believe. Yes, this was a Thursday. And normally Ethan goes to his grandma's house on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So we didn't have to worry about him. He was fine. But we're on our way to the hospital, and I could feel the contractions getting tighter. They're getting closer together. I was feeling more pressure down there. Once we got to the hospital, they checked me in immediately, and they started monitoring baby, because they wanted to make sure she wasn't stressed. So they started monitoring my stomach, and she saw every time I had a contraction, so she would ask me, do you feel it? And I'd be like, yes. And she's like, okay, she's like, yep, you're definitely contracting. And she just wanted to tie me up to hear baby's heartbeat. Baby's heartbeat was good. By, I think it was like 7-ish, she had a doctor come in, and she checked me to see where the bleeding was coming from, because back when I was admitted earlier in the week, they couldn't find where I was bleeding. They couldn't tell if it was TMI, the vagina wall, or if it was my cervix opening up. They couldn't tell. So the doctor came in, and she was having a look, and she couldn't tell either, because there was just so much blood. And so she had to call another doctor in, but she also had to call in this doctor, because I was a diabetic during my pregnancy. I had gestational diabetes. So the diabetes doctor had to come in and check me as well, to make sure everything was good. So it was a bit awkward to have a male doctor looking down there, but at this point I was in so much pain, I didn't really care. I just wanted to know if I was having my baby then, or if I had to hold it together until next week. But he had to look at me at about, it was like 7:30 to 8, and he came in and he asked me some questions and was like, yeah, you're 3 centimeters dilated. And I was like, oh my god. And he said, yeah, you'll be having this baby tonight. And that was at around 8:30, and I was like, oh my god. So yeah, that was about 8:30. The doctor told me that I was going to be having baby that night, and it's pretty crazy because we weren't prepared at all. Like, I swear, we had bags half packed. I had Blair's bag all the way packed, but I didn't have my bag ready yet. I didn't have pajamas. I didn't have like my toiletries. Like, I had my clothes, my maternity pads, my breast pads, and that's it. Like, I didn't have anything else. I think I had a pair of pants and a shirt. That was it. So from 8:30 or 8:30, that's when everything escalated. Like, labor just came on really quickly, and I was in active labor. Like, I mean, I was 3 centimeters dilated. I was in active labor because I was in the second stage. She was born at 11 o'clock. So I went from, you know, speaking to the doctor around 8 to giving birth to her at 11, which is pretty crazy. The midwives had like a shift change. So the midwife I was talking to before, she had to leave and go home. And I got this new midwife who was amazing. She just helped me out so much. Thing was, I wanted to give birth, I wanted to do labor in the bathtub. But because I was a diabetic, baby was premature. Like, I was 35 and 6 days. Usually the safe zone is 37 to 40 weeks. So I was premature. I couldn't go into the bath and do labor in the bath because I had to be strapped. So they were like, I'm so sorry, you can't do labor in the bath. We have to keep you strapped. We have to monitor her, make sure her heart rate doesn't drop, and make sure your heart rate doesn't drop either. So I ended up going with the gym ball, which was amazing, by the way, for contractions. So I ended up just rocking on it, sitting on it, bouncing on it all through labor. And the people I had in the room with me was Henry, my fiance, my mom, and Henry's mom, my mom-in-law. So I had all 3 of them, which is weird because they say you can only have 2 people, but I had 3. I don't know. I had all 3 of them there, and I was basically on the ball the entire time. And then when pushing came, that's when I got up off the ball, just kind of breathing through and pushing through contractions, standing up, leaning on the bed. And I had like Henry in front of me, and I was on this side, Henry was on that side. He's holding my hands. I had my mom at my back, rubbing my back. And because I was a diabetic and I didn't have anything to eat earlier because I was waiting for dinner at 6 o'clock and we left at around 6. And I am a diabetic. They said, okay, we need to get you some juice. All throughout labor, you have to be drinking the juice or the water because you need it since you are a diabetic and your blood sugar is going to go way down. So Henry's mom, my mom-in-law, decided to run down the hall and get some juice. So she was the one. So I had my mom rubbing my back, Henry in front of me for support, and I had Henry's mom pouring juice and water down my throat, like just telling me, just keep drinking, you need it. I ended up giving birth, standing up, arms on the bed, and basically my midwife was just behind me, underneath me, ready to catch her. So every time I had a contraction, she would just be there prepared to catch her. By like, I want to say by like 9, maybe 10, I don't even know. It went by so quickly, I don't even know what time I started pushing. When it was time to push, my midwife told me, you know, do little pushes. Not those big movie cinematic pushes where they're like grunting in pain and trying to push really hard. She didn't tell me to do that. She told me to do little pushes at a time, and I think that really helped because miraculously I did not get a cut. Like, I had grazes, and I think I had like a third degree cut from my cut with Ethan when I gave birth to him. I only got grazes when I gave birth to Blair, which is probably because she was so tiny. But she told me to do little pushes at a time. That really helped me out 100%. Like, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would because she would just keep saying, okay, little pushes, that's it, little pushes. And then she'd be like, okay, this is it. And I was like, whatever, it's not it. Like, it doesn't feel as painful as I remember it. And she would just keep saying, little pushes. This is it. We're getting there. And I was like, okay, we're not getting there because this doesn't hurt as bad as I remember. Like, it hurts a lot. Like, you have to chop the biggest poop. But it didn't hurt as much as I remembered it hurting with Ethan. And so when she said, okay, this is it. And I did like one really big push and her head was out, apparently, because I didn't feel it. So they were like, okay, her head's out. And I was like, what? The next time you feel a contraction, push really hard. And when I felt it, I pushed really hard. The only thing I felt was like her entire jelly body fall out of me pretty much, and the midwife caught her. So that was crazy because it didn't feel as painful as I remembered it to feel, which is great because I had the hardest pregnancy but the easiest birth, I want to say. But yeah, it was amazing because that midwife helped me out so much. After I gave birth to her, I got up on the bed so I could hold her. I was just laying there and the midwife was just, you know, checking me and everything. I had to give birth to my placenta, which was really weird. She put a blanket over me, and then after that all our family would come in and they came in to see her, see how I was, and Ethan got to meet her, kinda, sorta. And yeah, I tried to breastfeed. The nurse was doing the paperwork on the siding while everyone, you know, was taking pictures of her. And I think by like midnight everyone left because they'd been there for like 4 or 5 hours already, and Ethan was exhausted, and Henry stayed, of course. At around 1 a.m. I went to take my shower, had to do a really long pee to determine if I needed stitches. I didn't. I only had a 3rd-degree tear and a couple of grazes, unlike Ethan where I had 2nd-degree tear, and it was really painful. After I took a shower, we got all my stuff ready. After we got ready, we took Blair to the NICU and we got her like settled in there. I breastfed her there for a bit. Henry was getting tired, and by then Blair was fast asleep in the NICU. Henry took me back to my room, and funnily enough, I had to stay in the labor and delivery ward because there weren't enough rooms in the maternity ward upstairs. So I was downstairs where women are screaming all night long, giving birth to more babies, but it's not like I could sleep anyway. So I got back to my room at around 2. Henry left at about 2:30 to 3. I had to come see Blair every 2 hours to feed her. So I would sleep for a bit and then I would wake up at 5 to go feed her. Nurses would wake me up and be like, okay, it's time for her feed. And so I'd have to walk all the way over there to the NICU. Luckily there's a shortcut through the labor and delivery ward, and feed her. That went on for, I think it was just a day or 2 she was in the NICU. We're trying to get her weight up and her blood sugar up as well because it was pretty low. My milk didn't come in yet, so I only had the colostrum, which is what they were using to feed her. I'd have to like pump up a bit. She wasn't really taking it very well. She would take it a bit, but not enough for her blood sugar to go up, so we had to give her formula a couple of times, and she took it and her blood sugars would go up. So when her blood sugar went up, she was finally able to come with me. But I wasn't in the maternity ward yet, so we had to wait until I was in the maternity ward for her to come with me. But that took like a day. So on the 21st, I'm not sure what time I got moved to the maternity ward, but eventually I was able to go upstairs, and by 8 o'clock at night she was with me. So I spent that entire day going up and down, feeding her in the NICU while I was up in maternity ward. So I would just have to keep traveling. While she was in NICU, only grandparents and parents are allowed to go in. So only I could see her, only Henry could see her, and our parents. No one else was allowed in, just because it does get pretty crowded in there, and just to keep the other babies safe. The nurses were telling me, you know, she really doesn't need to be in here. There's nothing wrong with her. Like, all these other babies are really sick and really premature. She's a healthy baby. The only problem was she's a little bit underweight, and they were just a little concerned about her blood sugar, but they said it's easy to get that up. You just need to consistently feed her, which is what I was doing, and which is why her blood sugar was going up. They needed 3 consecutive good blood sugar levels for her to come up with me. So that didn't happen until 8 p.m. She had 1 blood sugar that dipped during the day. So that's why she had to stay until 8 o'clock, because 8 o'clock I think was like the last blood sugar test, which is when she came up with me, and it was all good. So she came up with me around 8:30, and by then everyone had already left as well because visiting hours ended at 8 p.m. Ethan didn't even get to hold her that day, so he was coming back the next day, which is on the 22nd. The first night was really hard. I got through it. It was really difficult. I think I cried because I was just so tired and so stressed, and I just really wanted Henry to be there with me. But I got through it and we bonded. I figured during the night, I kept trying to put her to sleep in that little crib, and it just wouldn't work. She just would not go to sleep. She would just consistently cry. So I gave up, and I ended up just picking her up and cuddling her to sleep, and we both just slept cuddling. I was worried because I was like, oh no, like this is SIDS. This is bad. But a nurse walked in and was like, oh good, you're doing skin to skin. That really helps premature babies. And I was like, yeah, I meant to do that, but I had no idea. I was just trying to stop her from crying. but apparently it's good for them. So I was like really glad that I was doing something right for once. So we'll fast forward to the 23rd, which was a Sunday, and finally we were able to go home. We didn't get to go home until 9 o'clock at night though. So basically we were just waiting for her blood sugar level test to come back to make sure she was okay. Yeah, that's my labor and delivery story. More happened. I want to talk about her jaundice, but I feel like this will be way too long if I mention her jaundice journey. If you want to see that, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter, on Instagram, like this video, comment, because her jaundice story is another pretty crazy story that if you want to know, I am willing to share. So yeah, let me know if you want to see the jaundice story. This is the end of my labor and delivery story. What sucks is I didn't get any footage because everything ran so quickly. Everything happened so fast. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it, or if you want to see the jaundice story. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!